this whole thing about John and having a dream, I spent a couple of mornings the last week writing these questions out, journaling about it, thinking about it. It's been, looking at my talents, my greatest talents, my greatest character strengths. What do others who have nothing to gain say I'm good at? What have my unique life experiences prepared me? What is my greatest passion? The thing I love doing so much, I would gladly do it for free. Sometimes you kind of look at what are you doing for free type stuff. What is so important to me that I would be willing to die for it? Now, that really, you think about the difference of that contract. I kind of want to ask John Maxwell a question here. Really, after talents, life experiences, what am I good at, my character strengths, my passion, then what am I willing to die, what is so important to me that I would be willing to die for it? That brought it to a whole new. Any thoughts with anybody on that?
To me, that takes me back to family. Would I jump in that river and try to save that kid, kind of thing?
Yeah.
Would I be willing to die for it? Anybody floating by, I don't know. I was a lifeguard, but family. I don't know that I have a purpose or job or dream that I would die for. I have to think about that.
Well, I mean, Danny, your experience in the military was, much longer and you're in full time, but there's some people in the military, first responders, they're running to the trouble. That's a big deal. And there's finally some people I met to go, I can't handle that anymore. I got to put more emphasis on my family directly and maybe, step out of the military. Not knocking their service, or they're not knocking it, but they just need to refocus. But that's one I would think of most.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, Tom, you're making me think of 9/11, all those guys and gals who ran to burning, a World Trade Center tower that they were pretty sure was probably going to fall down.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Or people that went directly to a recruitment center the day after 9/11 and signed up.
Yes.
Like boom.
Yep.
Yeah. That's big.
And that's saying it's a dream I have, something I want to do that I would die for. That's exactly what that means.
So, you know who that actor is that plays Thor, right? On the Avengers. Yeah. There's a series on right now, and I'll have to look it up. I can't remember the name of it, Life Step or something like that. But anyhow, he's going through dealing with stress and fear. And this counselor lady that specializes in that is taking him through all these steps. And the thing he had to do to train for that was to go up 900 feet and walk out on a crane, and work on reducing his heart rate and his stress level, because he didn't want stress to end up affecting his long-term life. So I highly recommend the series. I watched the first episode and I was like, wow, this was cool. So, anyhow.
Yeah, that
I
whole
saw that
story
first
around how
episode. That was pretty impressive, considering he was. His level of panic just getting on the elevator before he climbed up was like way up there. Yeah.
Yep. Life steps. That's right. That's what it is, or something like that.
Yeah, it is. There's the doctor in there has got him Atia that been following for a while. Atia is doing a lot of. He's been studying some on his own, but he and his team have been doing a lot of studies on aging and taking other people's studies over the last X number of decades and putting it all, compiling data about aging. And we're all, people, you take Dan Forbes' dad, he lived to be 101. My brother's stepfather lived to be 100. But it gets down to quality of life. And what Atia is saying is that the people are living to be 100 into their 90s and 100 and past now. It's genetics. When medically, we should all be living to be 100 because of the advancement of medicine and what we know about nutrition. But people aren't taking care of themselves. They're not exercising. They're falling. I mean, the average 70-year-old has more undeveloped muscle cells than he or she has ever developed in their life. They could still be developing muscle cells. So Atia gets into that, and that was part of the project, what they did there with, I can't think of the actor's name now, the Thor guy. So yeah.
Helmsworth.
What?
Helmsworth. It's Helmsworth, I think. It's not Liam's his brother. I can't remember what Chris Helmsworth. That's it.
Yes. Yeah.
So, number 2 question, my present. Some people look at their current circumstances, become discouraged because they're not where they want to be, but looking at the present is part of the process of discovering your dream. Answer the following question to help you see the potential of the present. Oh, by the way, back to what are you willing to die for? I started thinking about Yellowstone and John Dutton and the 1883, 1923 and all of that. What are all my current resources? Time, money, people, opportunities. What current circumstances can I possibly change to free up more resources or create more opportunities? What is unique to my current circumstances? Then he gets into my future. And says, he says, I hope you're beginning to see a pattern created by your past and present circumstances. Now it's time you ask yourself, if I could do anything I wanted, what would it be? And then we go into how far can I go? So where do you want to go? And how far can I go? You know, a good trip down memory lane, thinking back to when most of us were growing up, everybody in here, hey Castro, hey Ural, hey, everybody but you, the space race was, I mean, we heard it all the time, right, Tom?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've only seen reports and stuff. I wasn't around for that time.
Yeah. I mean, if he had not have stated what he stated,
no,
it wouldn't have. I mean, Herdy, your dad was involved in some of that.
My dad was the lead engineer on the guidance system for Apollo. In Huntsville with all that staff, Walter von Braun, all those guys. It was a miracle.
So your attitude determines your altitude. A dream without a positive attitude produces a daydreamer, on page 48. A positive attitude without a dream produces a pleasant person who can't progress. A dream together with positive attitude produces a person with unlimited possibilities and potential. To go far in the right direction, you need both, and Kennedy knew that. Yogi Berra, life is like baseball. It's 95% mental and the other half is physical. Anybody read David Goggins?
Yeah, which one? He just he just put out a new book.
Yeah, have you read both of them?
I haven't read the new one, but I've read the You Can't Hurt Me.
Yep.
Yep.
And and he claims in that, and this is former Navy SEAL, Special Forces, a couple other things, that when we're we think we've gone as far as we can go. We're only 40% there. And his new book, Can't Hurt Me. Some of you know Dan. I think everybody on here, well, not everybody, but some of you know Dan Forbes. Dan's listening to the book the second time right now. I mean, it's incredible. Just what he physically puts himself through. And he said it's not the physical, it's the mental. Any comments on anything here? Pages, I'm on page 51 looking. I love that little cartoon. My best girl left me. I have a lousy job. My feet hurt. The other guy says, I'm engaged to a beauty. I love this job and I can dance all night. The first guy says, he sure takes the fun out of wallowing in your own misery. What do you think about that thing about the attitude is a choice?
If you ever want to get like a funny perspective on attitude, I'm a fan. Just pick at random any Dilbert cartoon. And it is just, if the bosses, the pointy haired boss is there, you're like, what an attitude. It is, it just typifies. And the author of those cartoons swears after the first 18 months, he never had to write anything. People sent him actual ideas based on their experience. He just drew the cartoon, but it really, really hits you on attitude. Pretty fun. Sad, but fun.
What I didn't realize for quite a while was, because I've always had a pretty good attitude about things and, done a lot of things, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't realize you got to hang with the right people. Because I had a friend at work because she lived in my neighborhood and we were both working at Glaxo, and she's just very negative about life. And people thought I was negative because I was sitting next to her at a meeting. And they just assume if I'm hanging with her that I'm negative too. And it cost me, some, I wouldn't say a promotion, but it cost me some opportunities because I was being nice to her and she would be complaining about something. And, I'd either nod or say, yeah, whatever. But I just really didn't separate myself from her bad attitude. And so I've learned now to just stay away from those people.
Yeah, it cost you some equity. It's what Stephen Covey would say.
Yes, it did. Yep.
We got somebody right now that is daily dealing with some negativity in somebody that he has to be around every day without making some changes. Then how he's influenced versus how he should be influencing. And so Maxwell would it talks about leading down, leading around, and leading up.
What's the thing about if you stare into the abyss, it's looking back at you? That's part of it too. You become what you're hanging out with. Mm-hmm. We've talked before about, the 5 people that you have in your inner circle.
Yeah, it's a big part of what Ziegler claimed, a couple of people before him, that you're going to become 5 years from now. You're going to be the same as you are today based upon who you hang out with, what you watch, what you listen, what you read.
Yep.
Anything else in this chapter?
Oh, the sowing the seeds. Was that in this one or was that in the last one?
What?
Sowing seeds of success for others, helping others.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, just that the older I get, the more I'm trying to do that for younger generation. Just, sharing what I know, helping, not so much telling people what to do, but helping them kind of think through it. mailing somebody the book I love called The Defining Decade, about how the 20s, being in your 20s, defines where you're going to go in your life, the decisions you're making. It's just,
Yeah.
Danny, I think for me, when they talk about 7 signs of a great attitude, that first one about belief in self, it's not about being cocky, their ego, but, you've met people that I'm sure in work. I had one that I described as Debbie Downer. She'd kind of walk through the room, you see the rain cloud. And then it's like she radiated that. And I mean, she had such low self-esteem, although she had, I thought, good technical skills, but it's like she would put herself in a position where it was almost like she would talk herself out of an opportunity. I don't know how else to say it, but it's like she got past an opportunity because of her attitude, I think.
Yeah.
But it wasn't her technical skills. She just, I think that's just so strong. I know a lot of Maxwell's writings have to do with belief in self. He's trying to, think about your self-worth. And so I think that's an important fact.
Right. Yeah. That story earlier in the chapter, where, to that point, that the principal called in 3 teachers and said, because you 3 teachers are the finest in the system, you have the greatest expertise, we're going to give you 90 selected high IQ students. We're going to let you move these students through this next year at their pace and see how much they learn. By the end of the year, the students achieved 20 to 30% more than other students in the entire area. He said, I have a confession to make. The principal told the 3 students, you did not have the 90 of the most intellectually prominent students. They were run-of-the-mill students. We took 90 students at random from the system and gave them to you. And then I have another confession. You're not the brightest of the teachers. You're named for the first 3 drawn out of a hat. I mean, right there, it's right to the 7 signs of great attitude. And that first one you pointed out there, Tom, belief in self.
Mm-hmm. Danny, I worked with a guy at Cooper's who had served as a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. 3 tours. He was not a draftee, and he wouldn't talk about it very much. I said, I said, how was it? Well, I lost 6 helicopters, but only 3 are my fault. Oh, wait a minute. After you lose 2, you think you're volunteering, you think you'd go home. He goes, what do you mean? You never thought of that. And was he a calm person? Oh yeah. Nothing bothered him because they can't kill us here. That's all he said. So he just had that whole thing in his head because 3 are my fault. And you're like,
Yep. Willingness to see the best in others, ability to see opportunity everywhere, focus on solutions, desire to give, persistence, responsibility for their lives. The final characteristics of positive people are their willingness to take responsibility for their own lives. Unsuccessful people duck responsibility. But a successful person understands that nothing positive happens until you're willing to step forward and take full responsibility for your thoughts and actions.
Dan, I'm curious because it's a real life situation we're dealing with, Diana, here. So you think it's possible to coach someone to get out of that mess? Where it's someone else's fault. Wasn't me, it was someone else. Is it possible? I'm talking about an adult. I don't know how to handle that.
Well,
if they're not willing to listen.
They're not willing to listen, or they're willing to just read something. If they're not willing, I do believe that I'm thinking 3 or 4 books just popped through my head.
Yeah.
What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Sham Hedstetter. Um, he was one of the first guys to really write in a big way, get books published about neuroplasticity. And
Okay.
that was the second book my wife ever saw me buy 38 years ago.
And what was the name again, Danny?
What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad, S-H-A-D, Helmstetter. One word, Helmstetter, S-T-E-T-T-E-R.
Thank you.
The other book, John Becker and I went through, or John Purdy and I maybe, The Lies We Believe, by Dr. Chris Thurman.
Okay.
Chris lives here in Austin, and he's a Christian therapist, psychologist, or psychologist one.
Okay.
QBQ is a good, quick book. I've got a DVD of those classes. I'd be glad to give you if somebody will listen to it. The deal is, are they willing to? I mean, one thing about a kid, I had somebody I was meeting with a friend, and he brought his son. Recently, his son's 24, 25, and something was said, and he said, well, I didn't have a choice. Dad used to plug in these tapes as we would go on trips, and I had to listen to them. So he's getting that input.
Right.
And most, it's, I'll give you yes, I do believe you can change, Tom.
Okay.
And example of that is that I think some of y'all have heard this, maybe all of you've heard it, but this is about, this is 2022, so it was about 10 years ago, or 12 years, it was 2010 into 11. To come out of the mortgage business, I had 400 employees and all this. We kept downsizing. And after about 2 years of all of that, I drove up one day, and Kathy, walking out as I'm getting out of my truck, and she said, "You okay?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "No, you're not." And I said, "I'm not." She said, "No, something's wrong. You're acting like it's okay. It's a great day, Danny Smith, but you need to go upstairs and take one of your beloved assessments and see if you can figure out what's going on." And I'd been so much in the analytics that when I went upstairs, took a disc, and my disc was, if you know what that is, was just inverted from what it normally is. And I called an old coach I had named Richard Bellius. I said, "Is there a quick fix on this? What's going on?" And he says, "Take it again." And I said, "Richard, I've taken it 3 times over the last 2 days.
Stress.
And it's all the same." And he said, "Start plugging in tapes." And I started listening to Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and Dennis Whitley and tapes, and I just started. And I took an assessment about 2 weeks later, and about a month after that, about 3. It took about 6 months to get me back to my normal temperament. And so some people are they've been that way their whole lives. So you got more to dilute. Somebody asked me, I've been asked, "Why do you read so much?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to dilute all the crap in my head, and what I think about all the time is not good stuff. I mean, I think about the stuff John says here you're not supposed to be, thinking about. So we need more good stuff in, and it's that in 5 years thing. So really, Tom, I do believe that people can change, but it's like an alcoholic. They've got to want to change, and they've got
That's what I was about to say. They got to want to change. If they don't want to change, they're not going to change.
Yeah,
but
Danny,
Danny,
I think it's, the pushback is, this person does not want to be accountable. This is painful. It's painful, right? And so, that's the pushback. So they never get to the point to start the change the growth. So,
right. What did you start to say, John?
Well, I mean, you've got a teachable spirit. I mean, and that's a key part. Are you open and do you have a teachable spirit within you? Because like Tom's saying, there's some people that just don't. They put up a wall and they are not teachable because they don't want to be.
Yep. To both of your points, when down at the bottom of the hill there on 2222, and we occupied all that space, and and a guy had sent me the book, QBQ, the question behind the question. And what's the subtitle about? Anyway, it's about personal accountability, and that book it teaches you. Mike, that's okay. We muted you, and so if you want to talk, just unmute yourself. But remember that book. We went over it, what, a year ago, 2 years ago, and it teaches you, one, do not use the word who or why or when. You use, let's be sure I say it right, but you use, where and what. Where can I go? And use I. You don't use you don't use we. So it gives some very specific things to practice. So at corporate, we had about 125 people, and I spent probably $25,000 over a 3-month period. Had a trainer come in. We had at least CDs, and there's a guy out of Waco that was training this at the time, and everybody had to go through this class. Everybody wanted everybody to read the book, and we started practicing. What can I do? Instead of, Tom, why did you do that? It was, Tom, what could I have helped you with?
Good point.
And we had some serious kickback by a few people. Told them, you got to go through this class or your job's at stake. We had one guy named Chris. He made he had a salary, made about $80,000 a year. He was the executive assistant to one of our top guys, and he would not go through the class. He wanted to blame other people. He said somebody's always at fault. And the book says you never blame any. I think it's on page 42 of the book. It says you never blame anybody, including yourself. And it was a little bit of, Zig Ziglar said something about that you don't attack people, you attack events. And I think attack might be a stronger word than what he used. But Chris quit because he knew that he was going to be. He didn't show up for for training. And he had numerous occasions, and he was getting ready to get fired, so he quit. And a lot of people, I've run into people, that was all back in 7 and 8, 6, 7 and 8. We were practicing that, and you were allowed to challenge somebody that got into this blaming mode, to bring it back on you and ask yourself what you could do. It's part of the influencing thing, that when you're influencing, you've got somebody that you're influencing, like I mentioned a while ago, that you're trying to change their attitude. Because people impact us. What Beth said, they impact us. And sometimes we can't run away from them. We can't get away from them. They might be sucking the life out of us, but we have to deal with them every day. Might be a spouse. And, what words do you start using to influence the other person? Sometimes it's easier just to fire them, Tom.
I appreciate the feedback. Yeah, I experienced that at Otsuka when we changed the clothes from 30 days to 3 days. We had people that just thought it was a mission impossible and basically just left. And the weird thing was there wasn't a single person fired. Everyone had a job, a new job, but everyone was valuable. So there are people that just reject the whole idea could be done. Although every publicly traded company in the US does it.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
you know,
not trying to brag, but we used, go ahead, Beth.
Oh, I was just good. I didn't want to interrupt, but I was thinking about, Danny, I met you at Job Seekers Network, and that was a once a week therapy session to get people to stop saying, why, poor me, did I get laid off or I lose my job and I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that. But I found that it was so important for me to go every Monday. I had a place to go and I had a pep talk on, there is a way out of here. And you can get so down when you've lost your job.
Yep.
And, so again, Tom, I don't know that situation with that person, but when you can get into some once a week, Mastermind lifts me up. Sorry. It's like, I don't want to miss it because it's not just the intellectual talk. It's the, hey, here's some people who care about, my development, what's going on. And they're not, no one's pointing fingers at anybody and saying, you're just thinking about that wrong. Nobody's wrong here. And the attitudes are so good. And so if you can get into a group like that, but they're rare, I think. You got to go look for it. So.
Yeah, I've got a paper that I'm pulling some stuff out of right now. You made me think about, anybody heard about the Inklings? They were a group in London, Cambridge. You had Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, got in Charles Williamson, a couple of others, and how they lifted each other up for years. And Mike was part of I guess something was going on there at his new job, but Mike was working for a company that I started coaching at about 8-9 years ago. And Rob wanted to change the culture. And so I came in every week and we did this type of thing. And he bribed people. I said, Rob, there's mandate and there's buy-in. Food always gets buy-in. So if you'll pay everybody, their normal wage, come in and sit in a meeting for an hour and a half and feed them a good lunch. So he had some really good sandwiches brought in, different things and desserts. And I said, and if you're playing the long game, you'll, 1, change some people, 2, some people will leave, and 3, you'll hire other people like the people that of the culture that you want. And the first 6 months or more, we started with about the top 12 people that he dealt with the most. His 6 or 8 direct reports and a few others. And then we started anybody in the company. And I was out there twice a week for an hour and a half. And we just kind of go through these books and get people having a common language. Huge difference. Go ahead, Herb.
So Danny, playing sports like baseball, right, where you have teams, there was 2 kinds of players. There was raw talent, and then there was extreme natural ability. And it was always true on a team that the guy with the natural ability didn't work near as hard as the person with the raw ability. But the way that our baseball team in college, without scolding anybody, was everybody hustled, and you knew who the people were that weren't keeping up. So we led by example, not by words. So we'd stay and take extra batting practice. And then the guys that really didn't started showing up to do it because we were staying late. We didn't have to say a word. We just committed to the team. And so sometimes, as Beth was saying, you get around the right people doing the right things and it rubs off on them without having to say a word. Or they stay in the sandbox forever. That's fine. Either way.
Yeah. It rubs off. rubs off, or people will leave because you're working. They get mad at you about something else, and so. Anybody ever heard of Charlie Tremendous Jones? Before reading this on page 61. Let's see if I've got it here just a second.
Somebody play the Jeopardy song, please.
Well, I normally keep it right over here by my desk, by my chair. Just a
Bum, 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 bum.
minute. Anyway, Charlie
She's
Tremendous
back.
Jones. I heard Charlie speak in about 1978. I went to a Hobie Cat, you know what Hobie Cat catamarans are, convention, and heard this guy speak. And little bitty paperback called "Life is Tremendous." He said that the only difference between who you are today and the person you will be in the five, well, it's the same thing we've been talking about here. Come from the books you read and the people you associate with. Birds of a feather. Yeah, I had missed this when I read this this part last week about him being even in there. He also said, "Enjoy today because it's just going to get worse tomorrow."
Love it.
So find ways to relieve stress. Somebody asked what I did on my birthday.
You ain't
50-mile run.
ice cream.
I did have ice cream, but also had a 15-mile run to relieve stress. Don't take
Danny, were
yourself
you
too
stressed it was your birthday?
No. Take action to change your attitude. In part, Tom, I'm stressed because I accepted a challenge to get up at 4:30 every morning and post it this month. It's killing me.
Wow.
Not really. A lot of good stuff in here, guys. About take action to change your attitude. He quotes Dr. Glosser that if you want to change your attitude, start with a change in behavior. In other words, begin to act the part as well as you can of the person you would rather be, the person you most want to become. Gradually, the old fearful person will fade away. I was thinking of Dr. Attia yesterday was interviewing somebody, Rhonda Patrick, and she said that you have to, if you want to be healthy, you have to think about, you ask yourself, what would a healthy person eat? What would a healthy person be doing? Zig Ziglar in 1991 pointed at me and said, if you want to change, I suggest, you want things to change, I suggest you first start changing what's coming out of your mouth every time you answer the phone. And that's when I started doing It's a Great Day, Danny Smith. Change requires actions. I love this statement. Most people wait until they feel like it to change their attitude. If you wait until you feel like it to change your attitude, you will never change. You have to act yourself into changing. Beth, you're an act yourself into changing type person, I can tell.
I am. That's exactly right. And I was even thinking about the employee. I think there's an employee Tom was talking about that, if you could just ask somebody to just act like they have, like things are good, even if they're not, you know what I mean? Like, could you just come in tomorrow and act like things are good for one day,
Beth, you're reading my mind because I did that. And you just kind of fake it for a couple of days so we get through this. And really, I didn't say it, but it was really what they needed. They were terrible at it.
Yeah, but yeah, fake it till you make it is something that we say. But same thing with your attitude. Absolutely.
Yeah. I have to figure out where I read this or listened to it the last few days, but it was a pastor. I think it was a pastor helping someone through a tough time with a coworker, and he suggested to her, well, just start thinking how much you love her, and start thinking about how of any good thing that she does. And oh, it was her boss. That her boss was always picking on her. Boss was always doing this. Boss was a sorry boss. Boss was a sorry manager. So over the course of about 30 days, with nothing but her thoughts about it, it changed. And all of a sudden, he called her up in front of a group and gave her an award and for all the good work she was doing. And you know, he had done. The boss had made no changes. It was her.
Yep.
But me and my wife were just talking about this back in the day. We're talking about like 20 plus years ago. My wife worked at a Hastings. We were going through college and all that. And she had a boss who was just a jerk all the time. And me and my wife were talking about one day, and I said, just say something nice to her. And she said one thing nice to her, like something looked nice that day, or I like your blouse or whatever. Forever after that, she thought my wife was the most wonderful person ever. Now, she still had a little negative attitude, but she was a lot nicer to my wife than she was a lot of other people, because she just said one nice thing. And then, of course, my wife said other nice things to her afterwards, but just amazing. One nice thing. So we were just actually talking about that today. So.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and usually if they're cranky, everybody hates them, right? So, that one nice thing can really make an impact.
Exactly.
My husband right now, I'll tell you what, he's a negative Nelly completely. He was in Mexico for a month, and everything's gone wrong since we've gotten back. 2 cars in the shop, computer's not working right, and I had to do an online thing on his desktop, and I had to clear the cache. And for some reason, some of them, it doesn't keep the password then, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, and he's just swearing a blue streak, and he's so mad. And it took me a minute to go, boy, I understand. That's frustrating. Just sounding like you're talking to a toddler, and he doesn't hear it that way, even though I'm talking to a toddler. I'm like, that must really be frustrating. And then like when the password, I said, I think I did something that made that happen. I'll be glad to fix it. Let me try. And like, it sort of diffuses the whole thing, because I'll tell you what, my first reaction is like, look, I'm working, I got this. What do you I just wasn't quite sure. And he's just been, he was on vacation for a month. It's hard to come back.
Of course.
So remember that show 2.5 Men with Charlie Sheen, that disgusting sitcom where he always had problems with women, and because he never listened. You remember on that one show what he did? All these women were coming to him, and they would say something. He'd just go, "I understand." And the whole show was, "I understand," and they just thought he was the best listener and the greatest guy in the world, because all he said was 2.5 Men. He goes, "I understand."
Oh yeah,
and that's all he said. I understand. And they were all just, "Oh, you're such a good listener." And he's like raising his eyebrows going, yeah. All the wrong motivation, right? All the wrong reasons, but
yeah. But I mean, I've been living with somebody really cranky. I'd like to kick out of the house because it's just so annoying. But, I'm also thinking just what you said about, okay, I got to remember what I like. He's a good guy. That's not the problem. He's just been on vacation too long, and it's hard to integrate back in. I had my first training with SmithKline and French. It was GlaxoSmithKline. We had the head of training came the last day, and he said, you can go home smart or you can go home dumb. He said, don't go home and tell them all the great things that you did. We've been out to dinner. We went to, all these fancy things we did, right? He said, go home and just shut up and ask them how their 3 weeks were while you were in training, and how washing machine broke down and how the kids got, strep throat or whatever. Just listen. And that's some of the best advice I'd ever gotten.
Danny,
Yeah.
that verse in Ecclesiastes says that during the good times, be happy, go get them, have a blast. But during the bad times, consider.
Yeah, there you go.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I was at I remember being at a meeting with a guy one night. He'd come in from out of town. He was in town for 3 or 4 days. He was a consultant, and he and I had gone out to dinner. And this is back in the days we didn't have cell phones. His pager went off. He said, "Oh, my wife needs me. Hold on a minute." He came back like 30 minutes later, and he'd been in at the payphone Steak and Ale, and he said, "Well, that didn't go well." And his wife, somewhere in D.C. from Virginia on some bridge, had a flat and one thing or another, and they ended up eating soggy sandwiches and she was complaining and all that, and then he says, "Honey, my steak's about ready. Can I? There's nothing I can do, So yeah, not a smart thing to be doing.
Go home smart or go home dumb.
Oh, I love that. Go home smart or go home dumb.
I'm done. I like that. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That's good.
I just
Yeah.
wrote that down, Beth. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can't
Guy
fix
named Jeff
stupid.
Mackey, Mackey, Jeff
Yeah.
Mackey. Yeah.
Can't fix stupid.
No.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I kind of figured we would rush through this chapter and into another one, but let's finish up with the questions. Beginning on page 69, steps to take along the way. How far can I go? So, rights or responsibilities? Which am I more likely to think and talk to others about? If the answer is rights, what can I do to change that attitude?
Mm.
This is that kid that got fired at the law firm that we talked about.
Yep.
Yep.
Because he wanted his rights. I should be this, I should be that. Didn't take responsibility for why did I get yelled at or why was I in this situation. So totally perfect question right there.
I know somebody has a problem with documents right now with that problem. Just kidding. Hey, I was going to say, I was going back to this. This is a real appropriate chapter because I was thinking back to recovery days in 12 steps and everything. Everything in life's a trigger, everything. And they're built in. And if they were established long enough, I don't care how hard you work on them, they're always going to be present and ready to be activated. And so when I was teaching myself to journal, one of the things I wrote down was, what are my triggers? What causes them? And what can I do to start to work on these instead of just being so reactive, and be a little bit more proactive in changing the way I react to things. But I will tell you, it doesn't take much. If you hit me with a certain thing at a certain time in a certain part of the day, if things are not going right, and that trigger will go off, and before you know it, you're in it, and you just go, whoa, where'd it come from? But it happens. So we're human.
Yeah.
I think my take on that is, God gives each of us some really unique, specific skill set, whether we recognize it or not. And that comes with responsibility. And I think that, when I got that was huge, because it's you've met people where they've got some natural talent or skill, and it seems like it's wasted because it's all about ego. Their ego won't fit in the room. But I mean, God gives you stuff you're good at, and then you've got a responsibility to use it for his purpose. And we fail, but when we try, it's a lot better than saying I have a right to fill in the blank versus I have a responsibility to share or help people or fill whatever you want. What are you going to say about that?
I get a little nervous, Tom, when I hear that, because I'm always thinking back to the parable of when he gave the silver, and then
Yes.
they had to come back and be accountable for what they did with it, you know?
Yes.
So, you know,
Yeah, that's such an
that's a
interesting
good thing to
parable.
keep present on mind, you know, is
Yeah.
what do I need to do to be responsible to that calling today? You know, we get lost. We get lost in our days, and we forget all about the stuff we should be doing.
Yeah,
At
you
least
get
I
in your
do.
head or you get
I
lost in a
do.
busy day.
I
Yep.
do. I do.
Yeah. I do.
Somewhere in one of John Maxwell's books, he talks in depth about rights and responsibilities. And as you go, as your responsibilities increase, your rights decrease.
That makes sense.
People, who is the most positive person you know? Write his or her name down. Make an appointment to talk to that person. Ask what he or she does to remain positive.
Beth.
What's that, Beth? Yeah.
Beth.
Yeah, Beth.
Oh, it's the drugs, guys. It's the drugs.
It's the
Oh, that's it. Okay. Now we know.
Diana.
By the way,
Yeah.
that's going to come across really bad on audio because they can't
Oh.
see your face expression. Okay.
Okay, it's ethical pharmaceuticals. How's that?
Okay. Thank you.
There you go. There you
I'll
go.
leave it in now.
He has a prescription. It's okay.
The stress. Name some positive ways you can relieve stress and schedule some time in the next week to do at least one of them.
Walk.
Humor. We just had some of that. During the next week, tell at least one person a funny story about something that you recently did wrong or an accident that made you look foolish. Enjoy the joke together. If the person is a friend and looks shocked or uncomfortable, you may have a history of taking yourself too seriously.
I want to add to that. If you're in a work environment and you cannot find your sense of humor, you probably need to do a 180 and find that other door God provides. Because it is, if you lose your sense of humor, it is tough. We've all been there in a job situation where it wasn't easy, but when you when you can't even make a joke or laugh with people, there's a serious problem, I think. I mean, it's very deep seated.
Yeah. We were collectively, 100 and something people. We were probably about 80 people when we decided we were going to really determine what our real values were. Not what our values we wanted them to be. What are they? And then the one to be, and see where the gap was. But come up with a really good value statements, which we did. And it took about 90 days collectively. And the one thing that kept coming out was people wanted a value of fun, and I'm going, what? I didn't understand it. Really? And then the deal with Danny, you're having fun doing all this. We're not you. So,
And in fact, there's a study out there about work, and that one of the reasons people will stay at a job is if it's fun, which is kind of where, Google and some of them have gone way beyond, where they've got pool tables and this and that. But, if you're a millennial, you really want to have fun at work, and you don't want it to be, punching a clock.
Yeah. I talking to a guy who worked for a company called, Main Street Media, I think it was. It's a sales company downtown, and they would do a bunch of sales. And he said how, I saw him a couple of times. I remember he was telling me about the pool tables and that beer and then also the other stuff. And then I talked to him after he left that job, man. He's like, he has the worst job I've ever had. He said they do that to try to get you to enjoy it, but he said it's a horrible job. He said we work like so many hours, and if you didn't get if you didn't work enough hours, or you probably weren't going to hit your quota. If you didn't hit your quota, you weren't going to be paid as much, and you would lose your bonus and all this other stuff. He says it's a horrible job. He's like, you have all that stuff, but if you spend time playing those games and drinking that beer, you'll never get your job done.
I did some work for a software company. And where their ping pong table was, there was a bank of vending machines, except these didn't require coin. You just hit the button. I said, what does that cost? She goes, nothing. That's what he means. So spent $10,000 last month on snacks. They worked $50,000 worth of overtime, and I never paid And I was like, oh, he goes, I just keep filling from machines, man. I went, right or wrong, that was his attitude. But they were staying there working late and working with each other, eating candy bars or drinking soda. He said, whatever it takes, I'll do it. So
Wow. Attitude statement. Write a positive attitude creed for yourself, stating your intention to become a positive person. Let's see, who was, John was in the Thursday morning, the Ironman group. We went through the 15 invaluable, no, we went through Think and Grow Rich.
Right.
And Scott Carley was challenged to write more or less this out about a creed, a statement about what he wanted to accomplish and some stuff, and do it for 30 days. And he did it for 500 days. And it changed the scope of his business and what he was doing. He's doing one right now. Similar. That was he probably ended that. John, we went through that about 4 years ago, so he probably ended that.
Has it been that long, man? Yeah, I guess it has.
Yeah.
Sure
And
has.
Flies when you're having fun.
do what, Paul?
Time flies when you're having fun.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, guys, I appreciate it. And gals, I say guys.
I'm from Minnesota where we're all guys.
All right. Ural, man, I guess you like listening to all these old people talk.
I do.
Yeah.
Good wisdom. I'm on here.
All right.
Full transparency, I'm listening to the book over reading it. So I'm almost done and I'll start back over and be ready to catch back up next week. I missed last week. That was my fault for not preparing for it.
Yeah. All good. All good. We're going to be on chapter 4 next week.
Okay.
How do I get there from here?
Okay. Sounds good.
Oh, I like that sign. What does it say? Adventure.
Oh, Adventures in My Soul.
Very good. What's that
Yeah.
list next to it? What's that list next to it?
It's my my goals, which are still blank. So I got to figure that out.
Yeah, we need to get together and have some coffee and figure that out. Let me know if I can help. Yep.
Yeah. Dude.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having
Have
me.
a good day.
everyone.
Yep.
Thanks,
Have a
Dan.
great week.
Bye.
Bye, guys.